People who cheated on their partner with an in-law, what confession can you no longer keep? Story 1. My wife and I started dating when we were 18, and her sister has been dating her husband since around the same time we started dating. Her sister is 37 and I am 32. There has always been strong tension between her sister and me. The innuendos seem to grow stronger over time. At one point, when we were both just dating, her sister told me she was going to break up with him and wished there were two of me. She said things like that for a long time. Fast forward to about a year ago, we both have two kids. Her husband has not wanted to be intimate with her for 2 years, and my wife was the same with me for probably 3 or 4. When we do, it's routine. Once, her husband was at work, my wife was at a hair appointment, and the kids were all playing in the yard. Her sister and I started talking that day. I said something like, "Do you realize I haven't gotten a blowy in 6 years?" She responded, "Well, I haven't been banged in 7 months, so there." We were both in the kitchen, the blinds were down, and the sliding glass door was on the other side of the room. I just went for it and kissed her. She reciprocated, and it turned into a 10-second makeout. She smiled and said, "How long have you been thinking about doing that?" I replied, "About 15 years. She said, "Me too." Then she added, "Just to be sure, nobody needs to know." I said, "Of course." That night, she texted me and said she had been thinking about the kiss and how exciting it was because it was probably not the right thing to do. We went back and forth over text for about an hour. The conversation shifted from playful to us admitting we had imagined being with each other for a long time. I said something like, "Just make sure the next time you wear something that we won't have to waste time for." She laughed and replied, You know this is just us texting back and forth because we're in the mood." About a week later, I stopped over there with the kids at 6 o'clock in the evening during the week. Her husband works 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and has a 30-minute commute. My wife was out shopping with her mom. I got there, we looked at each other, and I just knew, and yes, it happened. It was less than 5 minutes, but my God, it was good. We have been doing it since then, 2 to 3 times per week or whenever we can. We've done in both of our houses, in cars, and even once in a restaurant bathroom. You name it. I don't regret this at all, and neither does she. Nothing has changed in our families, and I have no intention of stopping. So yeah, that's my confession. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I made a huge mistake with my son-in-law and can't say anything. This has been bothering me for a while, and I just need to say it. I know this was very poor judgment, and I have felt completely awful since this happened. I am divorced from my husband of 36 years. Our divorce was finalized in November of 2018. He immediately started dating a girlfriend about 15 years younger than me. After the divorce, I became very depressed and lost all self-confidence. I used that as motivation to improve myself and got in shape. I lost 20 pounds and decided to get implants, which I had done last June. After the procedure, I basically stayed away from the world for about a month until I felt confident enough to go out again and had recovered. My daughter and son-in-law have a pool in their backyard. Since it was summer, I spent some time at the pool with them and my grandchildren. In late July, my son-in-law made a comment about my implants. I was completely mortified, even though I knew it was probably obvious to them. I have been swimming with them for years, and there was no real way to hide them. Later that night, he sent me a text apologizing for saying anything and said he was happy for me. I replied and eventually sent him a selfie. He was very supportive and told me I looked amazing. At the time, I was in a very low place and had been drinking. I asked him if he wanted to come over, and he did. We ended up doing it. I had not been intimate in about 3 years, and I think that just the attention and being told I was beautiful led me to do it. Since then, I have sent him pictures a couple of times when he asked, but nothing else has happened. We have talked about it since, and we both agree it was a bad idea. We swore we would never tell my daughter. I have not told anyone else about this. I feel so guilty and can't stand hiding something this big from my daughter, but I cannot bring myself to tell her. Thank you for listening. Story 3. Overall, I don't feel bad about this, although I often think about how messed up all of this is. I am aware my reasoning is warped and immoral, but in the chance that someone can relate, this may help. It sounds ridiculous, but I do love my wife. It's not the ideal marital love. We used to have a marriage that was close to ideal, filled with mutual acts of care, respect, and affection. That lasted for nearly 3 years. It wasn't perfect, but we were happy. I miss hearing my wife tell me how happy I make her. Over the past 2 years, my wife's anxiety and depression have taken over her life, and she is bedridden most of the time. She stopped feeling sexy, and no matter what I do, she seems comfortable in her misery. Any attempts to help, see counselors, or even simply go on a date or join me at the gym are met with a litany of excuses. She'll only go to the doctor for pain, and even then, it's only for short-term issues. Anything deeper or underlying isn't addressed. I don't hate her, I feel bad for her, and I still have love for her, but the spark of being in love is gone. My mother-in-law is the opposite of my wife. She's fun, sexy, and takes good care of herself. She takes pride in being the best she can be, eating well, working out, and just being a happy person. It's easy to make her smile, and she's genuinely easy to be around. My guy friends have a bit of a crush on her and joke about my attractive mother-in-law. She's also incredibly sweet and nurturing, motherly to so many people, which is why she's so popular. She's just one of those women who remains strikingly attractive well into middle age. Well before our affair, my mother-in-law also tried to help my wife when she began to spiral. However, she confided to me that she's always been worried my wife could easily slip into a lazy lifestyle. My wife had severe depressive episodes as a teen, which I didn't know about until last year. I think I didn't vet enough while we were dating. My father-in-law is a couch potato and a resident grouch. He just sits around and plays video games all day. I don't know what his deal is. Apparently, they used to be a happier couple, but after a few surgeries, he became addicted to OxyContin and completely changed. This shift happened right around when I got married. He also refuses help. I even offered to pay for any treatment he might need. You can probably see the similarities between my marriage and my in-laws' marriage. My mother-in-law and I are pretty similar. We're driven and we're not ready to give up on our partners through divorce or separation. However, due to the constant contact between us, we live 45 minutes apart. The familial love transformed into something different about 2 months ago. My mother-in-law and I have found a sort of refuge in each other through our affair. It's messed up, but we don't want to just be with anyone. The intimacy is fantastic, happening several times a week. I've never experienced it this much. It feels perfect in a way my marriage never did. But I know deep down that it's flawed thinking. And I know why. My therapist said my attraction to my mother-in-law stems from my damaged relationship with my incredibly narcissistic and abusive parents. I see a well-adjusted and motherly mother-in-law, and I become very attracted. Living with a spouse who seems to have lost interest in contributing to the marriage further pushes me toward my mother-in-law. My therapist emphasizes that while he has seen this behavior before, it is unhealthy and needs to end soon. Being attracted to an older woman is fine, and even finding my mother-in-law attractive is fine, but having an affair with her is not. He has suggested I find someone else, and I agree with my therapist. Anyway, my mother-in-law and I have talked about ending it if our spouses improve. We've also discussed just ending it and moving on, regardless of the condition of our partners. I am young, so I could start a new life with someone else, and my mother-in-law supports the idea. She wants me to be happy and has, more or less, given up on my wife. In fact, she's pretty upset with my wife. My mother-in-law could move on too. Even at her age, she's definitely a catch, but she wants to stay for life. To be fair to her, she had decades of married happiness that was only lost about 5 years ago. So despite the affair, she's devoted, if not faithful. We both agree our affair is unsustainable. Enjoyable as it is now, we can have a healthy long-term relationship. I am seriously considering telling my wife that I need to fulfill my needs outside the marriage, but that I would still like to take care of her, even if that's through a caregiver. If she does not agree, I would consider moving toward a divorce, though I fear what may become of her. I will never tell her about her mother and me. I want a proper relationship, not just a string of one-night stands. Tinder was fun, but it felt like a cheap drug. I want someone who could be my best friend for life. For now, my mother-in-law gives me some semblance of that. But this cannot last. Story 4. I am 33 years old and have been married to my 29-year-old wife for 4 years. For the past 2 years, we have been in an open marriage and have enjoyed experiences with other partners. Our marriage is healthy and strong in all other aspects. About a year ago, my mother-in-law found out about our open marriage. I was not there when she discovered it, but she told me she knew during a weeknight visit when I went to her condo to hook up a cable box. She has been divorced for 10 years. I have never met my would-be father-in-law. She is an incredibly attractive woman, 51 years old. Long story short, I have been doing it with my mother-in-law a few times a month for the past year, and my wife does not know. We each have a few steady partners within our open marriage, but I think my wife would be devastated if she found out. I am unsure what to do. Should I stop and keep it a secret or be open and honest with my wife? My mother-in-law would never tell her out of fear of jeopardizing our marriage. Even though we have an open marriage, I feel guilty. Story 5. I have been married for 5 years and thought I was happy. My sister-in-law moved in temporarily to save money. My wife travels a lot for work. When I say a lot, I mean she is gone about half the year off and on. I know what I am about to say sounds messed up, but it really did start off innocent. While my wife was away, my sister-in-law accidentally walked in on me while I was changing and saw everything. She apologized, and we both laughed it off. Her room is right across from the hall from our master bedroom. Later that night, I heard what sounded like a toy, and the thought of her doing it really excited me. I did what any guy would probably do and took care of myself while thinking about it. Fast forward to the next morning, though I really don't know why I said anything when I saw her. I asked something along the lines of, "Hey, I heard a noise from your room last night. A toy, maybe." She was so embarrassed that she turned bright red. I laughed and she apologized. Jokingly, I said that since she got to see me while changing, it was only fair that I got to do the same. That was the moment things took a turn for the worse. She immediately flashed. I was stunned. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself from staring. Slowly, things started to escalate. I remember having an oh crap moment as we started doing it. It was too late. I had gone too far. Afterwards, we lay together, and she initiated the what the heck do we do conversation. We decided it was a one-time thing, and that we would never talk about it again. A few months later, she moved out. My wife never found out. I just needed to get this off my chest. This all happened over a year ago. My wife doesn't use Reddit, and I am fairly certain my sister-in-law doesn't either. Story 6. My wife and I have been married for 11 years, and we have 2 boys. One is 6 and the other is 4. My wife and I never get intimate. She has gained weight and has let herself go. She doesn't help around the house, and we rarely have intimate moment. I cheated on her once with one of her friends just 4 months ago. She got angry, and we separated for a short time. She then stepped up her efforts, losing weight and being more active, but quickly fell back into her old habits. My sister-in-law and I always chat online. She lives in another state, but sometimes she comes to visit. When she visits, she stays with us, and sometimes we are alone in the house. When it's just the 2 of us, we talk about everything. I talk to her about my intimate life, and she talks to me about hers with her husband. She said that with her husband, it was average and sometimes plain boring. My sister-in-law and I enjoyed chatting on Facebook so much that we decided it would be a great idea to see each other in person. We didn't have any specific intentions or plans to do anything we weren't supposed to. We just wanted to see each other and talk as friends. I booked an early morning flight to go see her. She picked me up at the airport and we went to her house. Her husband wasn't home. We had lunch and spent the time chatting. And then one thing led to another. We started making out and eventually did it on the couch. It was so intense that we did it multiple times. I was staying at a hotel, and every day while her husband was away, we would meet to go out together and end up at her house. During the last week, she told her husband that she was supposed to go on a business trip, but in reality, she came to my hotel room to spend a few nights with me. After that, I returned to Philadelphia. And from there, no one knows what happened between us. not her husband or my wife. I feel guilty about it, which is why I never told my wife. Yet the temptation to have another affair with my sister-in-law is still there. What should I do? Should I tell my wife or keep it a secret? Story 7. Honestly, I have never been able to tell anyone I know about this, and I just want to get it off my chest. Last year, when the second wave of COVID was kicking up, my wife, 28, and I, 33, were living in a cozy little two-bedroom apartment near a large city in the Northeast. We had been married for 2 years, and things were going pretty well, honestly. One day, she told me that her single mother had lost her job due to layoffs and was struggling financially. She asked if she could stay with us for a while until she got back on her feet. Her mom, 48, is a really sweet lady, and they had a decent relationship. I was hesitant at first, but I thought, what would I do if it were my mom in the same situation? So my mother-in-law moved in. Honestly, it was great having her around. She cooked a lot and kept the house tidy. She would hang out with us and watch movies, but generally gave us our space too. For a while, I thought everything was going fine, but clearly that wasn't the case. A few weeks turned into 3 months, and that's when things started going south. My wife and her mom began bickering frequently. We stopped being intimate because she was constantly on edge and said she didn't feel comfortable being intimate with her mom in the house. Around this same time, she started spending a lot more time out with friends and working longer hours, or so I thought. In reality, no surprise to anyone reading this, she was having an affair. How I found out about it was pretty wild. A buddy saw them out at a bar making out. He said they then got into an Uber together and left, and he sent me a picture of them kissing, practically in real time. Honestly, I just broke down. My mother-in-law came out and asked if everything was okay. "Did something happen to Jenny?" she said. I told her Jenny was fine and that I just needed some space. When Jenny finally got home, all hell broke loose. I hadn't planned on confronting her then, but she demanded to know what was wrong. She could tell I'd been crying and just would not let up, so I said, "Screw it," and showed her the picture. She looked like a ghost, started yelling that it wasn't her. Hint it was, and we proceeded to drag this situation through the mud right in front of my mother-in-law. She blamed me, blamed her mom, blamed COVID but herself. An argument broke out between all of us. My mom-in-law took my side. Jenny packed a bag and told us both to go to hell. The next day, she told me she was staying with a friend for a while and needed some space. Yeah, I am not stupid, so I didn't ask which friend, and that's exactly what she did. We texted sporadically, and she came by to grab a few things after a few days, but most of the time it was just me and my mother-in-law in the house. One night, we were just sitting there watching a movie. I was having some bourbon, and she was drinking wine. I was telling her how hard this had been, and she went to pat my leg and then just never moved her hand. At this point, it had been over a month since I'd done it, probably longer for her, and it just happened. I looked up at her. She leaned in, and that was it. And read it. Let me tell you, experience counts. I had never been with a woman who was so confident. She knew exactly what she wanted, and the chemistry was incredible. Despite her being a little older and not my usual type, it was amazing. Yes, we both talked about how guilty it made us feel, but that didn't stop us for the next 8 days, anytime I wasn't at work. Honestly, as horrible as it sounds, it was exactly the distraction I needed. Something to look forward to. At first, we slept in separate beds just in case, but eventually I stayed in the extra bedroom with her twice. In hindsight, that was incredibly risky, but I was a mess and probably didn't care as much as I should have. Now, you aren't going to love this part, but 2 weeks in, Jenny called. She wanted to talk. Against my better judgment, I said okay. She fessed up to everything. I did not. She apologized, cried, and begged, and in the end, I agreed to see a marriage counselor. She said she wanted to come back home, and that's what she did. My mother-in-law moved out shortly after that and went to live with a friend of hers in Florida, where she had gotten a job offer that actually paid more than her previous position. Jenny and I tried to make it work, but in the end, I knew I just couldn't get past it. I still love her, but I could never trust her again, and that's no way to spend the next 50 years. It was just too much. I filed for divorce at the beginning of 2022, the hardest day of my life, and considering all of the texts and the picture I had, she agreed not to contest it. We are now waiting for it to be finalized. I moved in with a buddy who was glad for the help with rent, and my mother-in-law added me on Facebook last week. I am not saying I am going to the beach anytime soon, but I am saying that once all this is over, I am definitely going to the beach. Story 8. I am not proud of this, but my sister-in-law at the time was a beautiful 18-year-old woman. We always got along well, and she was often playful with me. My wife and her family trusted me to be alone with her. A few months after she turned 18, I started telling her how beautiful she was and how she could be a model if she wanted to. In true hot girl fashion, she would tell me she could not be a model, giving me various reasons like her height and other trivial things. At first, I dropped hints that there were other types of modeling and suggested she could pose for magazines in swim outfits. I told her she should move to a big city and try to make it big. Essentially, I knew I was filling her head with dreams. I offered to help her financially and eventually convinced her to model for me. The whole time, she had a boyfriend who knew we were spending time together behind her family's back. I do not know what she told him, but he did not seem to mind. Soon, the relationship became intimate, and that is when we were caught. I was working in a different city at the time, so this affair was happening on weekends. One day, she left her social media page open, and my wife saw the messages we had been exchanging. We usually erased them, but on that particular day, the power went out, and she must have forgotten to delete them. My wife called me and told me that she knew. At that moment, I realized I had made one of the biggest mistakes of my life. She hung up on me and refused to answer my calls. I then called my sister-in-law to warn her. I knew she was with her boyfriend at the time, but it was an emergency, so I called her. She was in shock, and all I could do was hang up. It would be a whole week before I could go back home and try to resolve the situation. During that week, I seriously contemplated ending myself, but I had already messed up my life enough times to realize that no matter what happens, life goes on. By some miracle, my wife forgave me, at least partly. I still hate myself every time I think about what I did, but it is not something worth ending my life over. She told me that her sister had run away with her boyfriend and that they were getting married. I never told her that I had called her sister to warn her that night, so she believed her sister acted on a whim. Now it has been 3 years. I am still with my wife, and I continue to text my sister-in-law. We only talk about the idea of meeting up again, but it has not happened, and it probably never will. She is still married and has essentially settled for the life she has now. I cannot help but feel she might have had a better life if she had stayed single. She could have continued her education and done something meaningful with her life. Now, she is just a boring housewife who constantly fights with her husband and is generally unhappy. I feel guilty that I caused all of this by taking advantage of her. I still see her at family functions, and when other people are around, we speak as if nothing ever happened. I get the sense that she hates my guts, but cannot do anything about it without hurting herself and her family. Only my sister-in-law, my wife, and now Reddit know about this. I suppose an even sadder confession is that I want to be with her again. Story 9. I will start by saying, the initial infatuation was all on my part. I have been married for 16 years, but I never thought of my mother-in-law in that way. In fact, I found her obnoxious, and apparently she felt the same about me. My work relocated us to her town. Being in the same city, we often ended up working on things together, like helping her paint a room or assisting with tasks around the house. Neither of us was actively seeking the other. Spending time with her, I began to get to know her, and eventually I found myself attracted to her. It didn't really hit me until I had a dream about her. At this point, I feel I should provide some backstory. My father-in-law, her husband, has been bedridden for 7 years, and overall, his health is poor. I am, of course, married to her daughter, but our marriage has not been good for some time. Without going into details, I cannot leave, at least not until our children are out of the house. Now, back to my mother-in-law and me. As we spent time together, I came to realize that she was facing almost the same struggles with her husband that I am currently experiencing with her daughter. Unfortunately, my father-in-law was diagnosed around the time her children were becoming adults, and she chose to stay with him until the end. In short, she has been unhappy in her marriage far longer than her husband has been bedridden. During our time together, we both opened up and shared the difficulties we face. We grew close and began to trust each other. I made the first move one November night while we were hanging Christmas lights around her house. She got up on a ladder, and I supported her so she wouldn't fall by holding onto her back. She never said anything or moved away. The rush was exhilarating. Obviously, I am a grown man and have touched a bun before, but doing this with her was a completely new experience. I didn't know how to feel when I got home and thought about it later that night. Nothing changed between us, but I retreated into myself and tried to push those thoughts out of my head. At this point, she and I regularly met for breakfast on Saturdays, and my actions didn't affect that. The next weekend, we greeted each other as usual. A few weeks went by, and I had put it behind me until one night I had a work dinner event. After a few shots for liquid courage, I messaged her to see what she was doing at midnight. She replied with a few jokes I can't remember, but needless to say, I ended up at her house. I wasn't drunk, just buzzed enough to flirt and convince her to come outside and meet me. She was happy to see me when I pulled up. She climbed into my truck, and we chatted about my night for a bit. Then she got a call from my father-in-law asking about the security sensors going off. She told him I had stopped by and that she would be in shortly. After hanging up, she invited me inside so I could finish catching her up. I went inside, spoke to my father-in-law, and apologized for the late visit. He said it was fine. We chatted for a few minutes, and then he went back to sleep. She and I finished our conversation in the living room. Somewhere in the middle of our conversation about my night, she congratulated me on my recent promotion and said she wished she could have come out to celebrate. She didn't need to explain, but she did anyway, saying that taking care of my father-in-law took most of her time, so she couldn't be away too long. For whatever reason, I told her we could celebrate there. I had 2 bottles of wine in my truck that were gifted to me that night for my promotion. She eagerly agreed and said it was an excellent idea. We opened one of the bottles and settled in the dining room to chat. Halfway through the first bottle, I started to feel like I might need to go home soon before I reached a point where I couldn't. She seemed to be enjoying herself and didn't appear to want me to leave either. We agreed that we would finish the bottle and I would call an Uber to take me home. We sat there for another hour or so, chatting and laughing, until we finished the bottle. I checked for an Uber, but there were none available. She then suggested we could open the other bottle while we waited. I agreed and ended up drinking the entire second bottle with her. At that point, like clockwork, I received a notification from Uber that it was 5 minutes away. She walked me outside and we chatted while we waited. When I saw the Uber turn the corner, I hugged her goodbye. The hug lasted about 10 seconds, but in my mind, it felt like forever. We lingered, and I even managed to tell her I had a great night with her, all while hugging her. Before we let go, I gave her a quick peck on the neck. I will be honest, I had intended to kiss her cheek, but the intensity of the long hug caused my kiss to land on her neck, between her shoulders and ears. I got into the Uber and headed home. I should add that my wife was at a work expo. The entire ride home, I kept thinking about our hug and my kiss. When I finally arrived home, I got ready for bed. As I lay in bed, I continued thinking about her and what had just happened, until I eventually drifted off to sleep. A few more weeks went by, and I once again found myself drinking, this time to celebrate my best friend getting promoted as well. It was just us guys, so there was no decorum or wine involved. Instead, it was a wild night fueled by bourbon. Luckily, we had rented a limo bus for the evening, so no one had to drive. Unluckily, there was more booze on the bus. By the time I got home, I was so hammered that I don't remember messaging her. Apparently, I told her about my plan for our next breakfast at a new spot further away, and how special it would be that we could get away from them, even if just for a bit. I didn't realize how flirty and direct I had been until the next day when I read the messages. I was mortified. To my surprise, she replied the next afternoon, telling me how excited she was and how amazing the date sounded. Not to gloss over it, but we did end up going on that date, and it was great. However, there was no flirting or anything of the sort when we went. It was no different from our usual breakfasts. To this day, I don't know if she expected more, or if she was simply happy that I found a new place for us to experience something different together. I am sure I am overthinking it. A few months later, we found ourselves renovating her kitchen, a 2-week undertaking. During that time, I once again touched her accidentally, and she never objected. Small touches like this occurred here and there throughout the project. On the last weekend, while we were cleaning, the vacuum filter exploded and dust went everywhere. We quickly ran out to the backyard and helped dust each other off. She brushed the dust off the back of my jeans, my face, and various other places. After this, I felt comfortable and brave enough, so I began dusting her, until eventually I went in and brushed her chesticles for about 10 seconds, after which she said, "Okay, I am good." I thought I was in trouble. It wasn't until a few seconds later that I understood I wasn't in trouble. She was getting excited, and that was the reason she asked me to stop. A few weeks later, feeling braver, I jokingly asked her to a movie date night. She liked the idea and agreed. I felt reassured and confident when she replied with yes to date night. We planned on ordering dinner from a new Italian restaurant, sharing a bottle of wine and watching a new movie. During the course of our date, she complained of a tension headache. I began to rub her scalp, ears, and then shoulders, all while joking about some silly age-old Chinese secret I had made up. About 20 minutes into the massage, she thanked me but said she was good. Her tone seemed uncomfortable, and I thought maybe I had done too much in my buzz state by moving lower. It wasn't until after she excused herself to go to the bathroom and returned that she seemed more composed. That night, we both drank a little more than we had intended, so she suggested I sleep for a while in the guest bedroom before driving home. She readied the room while I watched her. We hugged and kissed on the cheek goodnight before she went to her room and left me in the guest room. It has been a total of 2.5 years of this flirtatious behavior, and I like to think it is not all in my head, especially after seeing her eyes linger with longing whenever I have to leave after spending the day with her. My dilemma is that I know she wants me as much as I want her, but through our talks, I do not believe she could betray her husband despite her disregard and distance from him. More importantly, she could not betray her daughter, even with their estranged relationship. In the end, I think I will make my move after her husband passes. This probably makes me sound like a horrible person. I know, but her daughter and I are nearing divorce, and since they have no real relationship and are more or less estranged, I feel I need to know the answer to this burning question. This is a true story. If anyone has real advice beyond the typical penthouse forum response of just do it with her, I am open to hearing it. I also understand that many men make similar claims only to have fabricated everything in their heads, but the interactions and her behavior I described above cannot simply be coincidence or my own delusions. Story 10. About 6 months ago, my boyfriend and I moved in with his cousin Ashley and her fiance Greg. He is very close to his cousin. They grew up together and she is more like his sister. They bought a house together and have 3 kids, but quickly realized how expensive the mortgage was actually going to be. They asked us to take the downstairs bedroom and help with the payments, and we were happy to do that. I've always gotten along well with Greg, and we never had any issues casually hanging out when no one else was around. When we moved in, things started to get strange. There were side glances, lingering smiles, and clear flirting from Greg. Then one day, we ended up doing it in the kitchen while everyone else was at work and the kids were asleep upstairs. Afterwards, he admitted that Ashley is pregnant and hasn't been willing to be intimate with him. I want to tell my boyfriend, but Greg is worried that everything will fall apart. He might lose access to his kids, they could lose the house, and the family would unravel. Because of that, I haven't said anything, but it's eating away at me. I know it's horrible and wrong. I love my boyfriend. But I am starting to think I might just break up with him without ever telling him what happened. I couldn't bear to be responsible for breaking up their family, even though what we did was wrong. Story 11. I cheated on my partner with his dad and don't know what I should do, confess or not. Before even getting into the main part, what I did is unforgivable. And yes, I am fully aware that I am a crappy person. And no, the backstory isn't meant to justify anything. It's just to provide context for how it all started. I've been with my partner, let's call him David, for nearly 3 years. We met while working in Ireland, and after a year of dating, we decided to move back to his native country when he got a very good job opportunity. The language here is completely different from mine or any other language I speak, and I've struggled with learning it and making friends. David has always been very supportive, helping me whenever he could and never leaving me alone in social situations, knowing I get anxious easily. His family is much the same. From the moment I was introduced to them, I felt like part of the gang. They always found ways to communicate with me, even though we initially had no common language. Despite all that, I've been feeling very isolated lately. I see my family only once a year, and even then, it's just for a week. My job is also on the line, as my company is planning another restructuring that will leave 10,000 people unemployed by the end of the year. David sees this as an opportunity, as he's always wanted kids and has been talking about it a lot lately, but I am not sure I am ready for this yet. Anyway, 2 weeks ago, David's family had a huge celebration, and everyone was invited to the restaurant for lunch. We were supposed to meet at 1:30, but as always, David took ages to get ready, and we arrived 45 minutes after everyone who had been waiting for us. I was pretty upset, and so were the others, but David brushed it off and sat down like nothing had happened. As we sat, I told him to apologize because, in my opinion, it was extremely rude and had ruined the mood for the entire day by getting everyone worked up. And in front of everyone, he told me to stop being a bitch about it, sit down, and stop making a scene. I was first extremely shocked, as he had never spoken to me this way before, and then I left to cry in the bathroom. I don't think I've ever felt this humiliated in my entire life. The whole family started arguing with him to defend me, but I honestly couldn't gather the courage to face them again after that. After 15 to 20 minutes, I heard someone knocking at the door to see how I was doing. It was my father-in-law, Alex. He said he was very sorry for his son's behavior and tried to convince me to come back with them, as everyone wanted to see me. I was feeling so bad that I couldn't express myself properly and kept switching to my mother tongue, which Alex clearly had a hard time understanding. Then he kissed me. He did not force me. I want to make that clear. But that was way too much for me, and I left immediately, taking a taxi back home. A few minutes later, David joined me and apologized. He'd been under a lot of stress and wasn't feeling up to handling the whole family that day, and he promised he would never take it out on me again. 2 days later, Alex showed up at our home in the middle of the day, knowing David wasn't there, to talk about what happened. Long story short, we ended up doing it. We've been seeing each other pretty much every day ever since. The more it goes on, the worse I feel. Not about him, as I think I've always had a little crush on him since I met him, but about what I am doing to his son and to the family who took me in and made me feel like one of theirs. I know I messed up really badly, and I really love David. I do. But I also have some complicated feelings for Alex, even though we decided today not to see each other that way ever again. I want to confess what happened and be honest with him, but it would hurt him beyond imagination and could destroy the entire family. I am ready for the insults. I deserve them, but I also need advice. Should I confess despite all the consequences, or should I keep it to myself? Edit. I talked to my mom this morning and told her everything. Once the anger passed, she told me to leave David and confess about the cheating, but to keep Alex out of it. She thinks my duty is to give an explanation for why I am leaving, but it's up to Alex's conscience to decide what he wants to do. In this country, the notice for leaving a job is 2 months, so I will stay with a friend during this time and organize my return to my home country. I am leaving our flat by the end of the week, but I don't know how to have this conversation with him. Story 12. My wife, 25, and I, 27, had been married for a year and were expecting our first child. My wife pretty much stopped being intimate the day we found out she was pregnant. Her parents lived overseas, and it wasn't until the 7th month of the pregnancy that my wife wanted her family to be with her. Unfortunately, only my mother-in-law could travel at that time. I hadn't interacted much with her mother-in-law due to a language barrier, but we communicated enough to know if she needed or asked for something. My mother-in-law was in her early 50s at the time, but looked a lot younger than her age. I was studying then and ended up being at home a lot more than I wanted to. My wife was in the last few weeks of her pregnancy and was resting more than before, which meant I had to spend more time with my mother-in-law, helping with shopping, cooking, and other tasks. My wife and her family are very religious, and I would never have assumed that her mother would be any different. We ended up spending nights alone after my wife went to bed. To get to the point, I started flirting with her and complimenting her on how good she looked for her age. One night, when my wife went to bed early, things got a little heavy. I made a move, and she did not resist. Her husband is a decade older and doesn't give her much attention. She turned out to be a freak, and I experienced the best I've ever had. This went on for a few months until she had to head back home. We've crossed paths since, but we decided it wasn't right to continue. I just wanted to talk about this because no one knows, and I still can't get over it. My wife obviously has no idea, and I will leave it at that. Story 13. My brother-in-law is extorting me. My husband's work requires him to travel, and he often leaves me alone for long periods of time. I just gave birth to our precious baby girl last month. At least it could be our baby girl. When my husband was away last year, I felt very lonely, and my needs were not being met. My brother-in-law and his wife allowed me to stay with them. He would always compliment me in a way my husband never did. He would massage my back and comfort me when I missed my husband. I did not love my brother-in-law, but this comfort was something I really needed. One day, we drank. You can probably guess where this is going. We ended up doing it. It was strange but beautiful to have this secret lover in a way I never experienced with Kyle. However, I stopped after a few encounters because during our moment, Kyle's face kept appearing in my mind instead of my lover's. 2 months after this, I learned I was pregnant. My husband had already returned from his trip, and since we had been intimate, I assumed the baby was his. But my brother-in-law reached out to me and said we needed to talk. He claimed that the baby was clearly his and insisted that I tell my husband about us. I refused because it had been a mistake. I did not love my brother-in-law. I loved Kyle. Story 14. I am having an affair with my wife's mother. I know that what I am doing is terrible. I swear I am not typing this to get any sort of approval. I am doing it to get it off of my chest. My wife and I are 19. We have been together for 3 years and got married 5 months ago. Our relationship was genuine. Even though we were young, we faced many adversities, mainly her abusive father disliking me, and we pushed through each one. Even though it won't seem like it, I really do love her. Her mother, who is 40, and I have always had a great relationship. I admired her deeply because she went through a lot of painful, horrifying, disgusting things in her life, yet was still the sweetest, most optimistic individual I've ever met. A literal angel. Even though she was the mother, my wife was extremely protective of her because she had such an innocence. She moved in with me and my wife about 3 months ago. We have a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, so she's had to sleep on our super uncomfortable couch, which she does happily. After she moved in, our relationship slowly started changing. We would have to keep each other company because my wife works long hours. It turned out that we were into a lot of the same things like anime, certain books and certain series, things my wife doesn't care for, so we bonded over those things at first. Then she started opening up more about her life, and I became even more admired and protective over her. I just wanted her to be happy and loved for once. Soon, I started noticing her physically. She's a thicker woman, which I always secretly had a thing for, even though my wife is very petite and thin. It seemed like she would start wearing a little less pajama shorts instead of pajama pants, for example. Little things would get me in the mood, and I'd had to take private breaks. A week ago, she came back to our place crying. I immediately went to comfort her, and I held her on the couch. I kept asking her what was wrong, and she refused to tell me out of embarrassment. I kept telling her it was okay to tell me, and she broke down and admitted that she feels extremely fat, old, and undesirable. Said that she saw a group of guys laughing at her. I honestly started crying too and tried my best to convince her that she was not any of those things, and then something just came over me. I started kissing her. I thought she would push me away and slap me, but instead she started kissing me back. And long story short, we did it. Afterwards, she broke down and decided to get a hotel to stay in instead of with us. I understood, but ever since, when my wife goes to work, I drive to her room and we do it. I've begun craving her to an uncomfortable level. Even her flaws are delicious to me. She seems to really want me too and is honestly way more passionate than my wife has ever been. I know that this has to end and very soon. I fell down a terrible black hole and it's all my fault. Now that I am stuck in it, I don't even know how to begin to stop. Story 15. I did it with my brother-in-law. I guess I am kind of posting in hope of some advice too. I know I shouldn't have done it, and I am soaked in guilt right now. I feel like such a worthless piece of crap, and I feel real friggin' greasy. I just really don't know how to deal with the situation. So I am 21-year-old dude. My sister and brother-in-law are 5 years married, both in their early 30s and have a baby together. They're pretty much my closest friends and the only family I got. My mom passed away when I was 5, and my dad is like the grand poobah of drunks. Nice dude, doesn't yell or get abusive even when drunk, but he's absolutely incapable of talking to any one of us unless he's drunk. So I am pretty close with my sister and brother-in-law. I spend a lot of time in their place, and they have me babysit their baby for cash too when they're not home. I've been pretty good friends with brother-in-law pretty much since they met. I don't think I've ever clicked with someone the way I click with him. Our humor's in sync, we have great conversations, we got so much in common, I feel so much like myself around him. Crap, he even tried talking to me about some issues he has with my sister, but I shut it down because I didn't want to get between them. They know I am gay and are okay with it. And I didn't know brother-in-law is bi, which apparently he is. Honestly, even though I do like him a lot, I never thought much about it. I never even entertained the thought of doing anything with him. Never thought I'd ever do anything like that to my sister. She literally paid my freshman year tuition. But last weekend, my sister was off-state camping with 2 friends. So I stayed the weekend to babysit since brother-in-law works weekend morning. Saturday night, baby's asleep, we're playing Mario Kart and drinking some tequila. I don't know if it was being so close to him, brushing him accidentally all the time, the booze buzz or what, but I got so in the mood, and this time I could feel tension too, like it was almost mutual. Honestly, I don't even know how it started. We just paused the game, started talking, and next thing I know we're making out. I really like him. Not gonna lie, I've been with a bunch of guys from Grindr before, but damn, I've never felt as much gripping intensity as that moment. I feel like even in that moment, I knew I really shouldn't, and so did he, but the second we started making out, it was like trying to stop midstream, nothing could pull you away. Anyway, we texted later that night and agreed it was a mistake, that it would never happen again, and that my sister would never, ever know. But now, I feel like absolute crap. My sister has been inviting me over, and I keep saying no. I feel like I can't go there anymore. It would be weird and awkward, and I want some distance because I think I was already starting to fall in love with him. I feel that not only did I betray my sister, to whom I owe so much, but I also lost a great friend, and the 2 people I could rely on the most, and my adorable niece, whom I genuinely love. Now, it will always feel strange being there. I feel completely broken and alone right now. The guilt is overwhelming, suffocating in a way I have never felt before. I have been drinking myself into oblivion these past few days because it is almost the only thing that distracts me from the thought that from that moment on, I will always deserve any hardship life throws my way. Story 16. My sister-in-law, 20, moved in with us about 8 months ago. She was having money problems and we live near her school. My wife and I have been on and off the rocks every few months. We don't have any kids. Lately, my sister-in-law has been taking my side in arguments. There has been no intimate contact or anything really out of the ordinary between us before. The worst thing that has happened is that I accidentally walked in on her in the bathroom. She laughed it off, and it truly was an accident. I didn't realize anyone was in there. That said, I would be lying if I said I haven't thought about being with her. My wife went on a work conference trip for the week, and last night my sister-in-law and I were drinking quite a bit and ended up doing it. This morning, I woke up freaking out. But after a long discussion, I realized this girl has a good head on her. She told me not to worry because she doesn't do relationships and won't bring up what happened last night. I think I believe her. Story 17. I don't know what to do now. This will break my husband's heart and my sister-in-law, my husband's sister. Last Saturday was my brother-in-law's 40th birthday. We celebrated with a vacation in Mykonos, my mother and father-in-law, my husband, his sister, her husband, and me. I have been married to my husband for 12 years, 10 of them without any physical intimacy. What our relationship lacked in bed, it more than made up for in affection and intimacy. We love each other deeply. I have never felt so loved in my life, and I've only had negative experiences with physical intimacy, which is why I chose to stay married to my husband. Besides the occasional panic I get some nights thinking I might never get to do it again, my life is happy. My marriage is happy. We have many friends, loving families, financial stability, and great careers. I am 39, and the thought of leaving my husband for some chance at physical intimacy is unbearable. My husband is 50. He's not going to start doing it with me now. He says he loves me and that nobody will love me the way he does. He told me that if I left, I might have what I want, but I would never be loved. I am 39, and it feels like nobody would be interested in starting a life with someone my age. My brother-in-law has been married to my sister-in-law for 20 years. They have 2 children together and just bought a house. They're not financially stable enough to get a divorce, and it would devastate my sister-in-law emotionally and jeopardize her future. We slept together twice in one night in Mykonos. Everyone else went to bed, but we stayed up talking and drinking. I told him everything, and he was shocked that I haven't done it in so long. I don't know what came over me, but my longing just took over, and well, it happened. I am not trying to make excuses. I hate myself for what I did, but I don't know what to do now. I love my husband. How can I tell him why I did this, especially since this is the one thing he knows I long for, the only thing he can give me? And what about my sister-in-law and her children? I can't ruin them. I need help. Please don't judge me too harshly. Some days I wish I had never been born. I am thinking of 2 options. 1. Live with the guilt. 2. Ask for a divorce but never tell my husband why. Just say I slept with some stranger to spare him and his family the pain. Story 18. My wife and I married in the spring of 2010, and on the surface we have a great marriage. However, that hasn't always been the case. My wife cheated on me a little over a year into our marriage, but we managed to get through it. Then it happened again, and I asked her to leave our home temporarily. She moved back in with her father. My wife tried to contact me and work things out, but I refused to respond. One day, she texted saying she needed to come by the house to get her clothes. I finally replied, telling her I would leave her stuff outside so she could pick it up without me having to see her. She disagreed, saying that since we don't live in the best neighborhood, her things could get stolen. She told me her father would come by to pick up her clothes, and I agreed. My wife's father is openly gay. He and his wife divorced when my wife was a child because of it. Her mother left and was never heard from again. When my father-in-law came to pick up her clothes, he also asked for her laptop, which I had no idea where it was. He helped me search for it, and once we found it, he left. The next day, I got a text message from him saying he needed to get the laptop's charger, so I told him he could pick it up tomorrow. When he came over, he seemed a little off to me. He asked how I was doing, and I told him the truth, that I was devastated and felt completely betrayed by his daughter. This was the first time I had ever truly discussed how I felt about everything. I broke down and started crying. Her father gave me a hug, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel so alone. I don't consider myself gay, but for some reason I had the urge to kiss him, and I did. He seemed surprised, but strangely, he didn't pull away. We kissed for at least half an hour. For the first time in months, I didn't feel so isolated. Then, one thing led to another, and we did it. Since November 2012, we've done it 7 times, and no one knows. I have genuine feelings for him, and he says he feels the same. My wife, whom I am still legally married to, still lives with her father and has no idea. We haven't divorced because she refuses to sign the papers and completely ignores the topic when I bring it up. She tells me she wants to be with me, but I no longer feel the same. I just needed to finally rant and get this off my chest. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.